Welcome back to Apex Sci-Fi. In the history of warfare, there is a specific kind of fear that transcends technology. It isn't the fear of a bomb or the dread of a fleet. It is the fear of the invisible. It is the realization that you are being hunted by something you cannot see, cannot track, and cannot stop. The Calyx Legion, a race of six-eyed hulking giants from a high-gravity world, learned this fear in the shadows of the Himalayas. The Calyx were a force of overwhelming power. They didn't believe in stealth. They believed in the crushing advance. Their armor was 6 inches of reinforced carbon steel, and their weapons were massive gravity hammers that could level a building with a single shockwave. When they bypassed Earth's orbital grid and landed in the Tibetan Plateau, their goal was simple: seize the high-altitude atmospheric processors and hold the roof of the world. The humans have no heavy armor in these mountains. The Calyx overlord Valkru boomed over his legion's frequency. The air is too thin for their jets and the terrain is too steep for their tanks. We will march through the Devil's Throat, pass and take their capital by sunrise. They have nothing to stop us but the wind. Valkru was right about the tanks. He was right about the jets. But he forgot that for 2,000 years, the mountains of Earth had belonged to a different kind of predator. Master Sergeant Elias Zero Kale sat 3,000 meters above the pass, perched on a ledge that shouldn't have been able to support a human. He was wrapped in a Spectre suit, a miracle of Terran engineering that matched his body temperature to the surrounding frozen rock and bent light around his silhouette. To a thermal scanner he was a stone. To the naked eye he was a ghost. Next to him lay Longinus, a 2-meter-long electromagnetic rail sniper rifle. It didn't use gunpowder. It used a series of superconducting magnets to launch a 20mm tungsten carbide needle at Mach 10. At that speed there is no sound of a gunshot. There is only the crack of the sonic boom, and by the time you hear that you're already dead. Target distance, 2,400 meters, Kale whispered into his bone conduction mic. His voice was calm, his heart rate a steady 40 beats per minute. Windage, 6 clicks left. Elevation, adjusted for thin air. Target identified, lead scout. Kale didn't pull the trigger. He squeezed it, exhaling his breath in a slow, controlled puff of white mist. Crack. 2 miles away the lead Calyx scout, a 3-ton monster in heavy plate armor, suddenly jerked. A tiny glowing hole appeared in the center of its primary eye. A microsecond later, the back of its helmet erupted in a spray of blue ichor and shattered steel. The scout collapsed into the snow without a sound. The Legion stopped. "Sniper!" the Calyx squad leader roared, raising his gravity shield. "Find the trajectory. Scan the ridges." The Calyx multispectrum sensors swept the mountainside. They saw nothing but snow and frozen granite. Kale didn't move. He didn't fire again immediately. He waited. He let the silence do the work for him. 10 minutes passed. The Calyx, growing impatient and convinced it was a fluke or a lucky shot from a long-range drone, began to move again. Crack. The squad leader's head vanished. Panic began to ripple through the Legion. This wasn't a battle, it was an execution. The Calyx started firing their gravity hammers blindly into the cliffs, sending tons of snow and rock tumbling down. They were trying to provoke a reaction. They wanted the ghost to move. Kale adjusted his scope. "You're loud, big guy." But loud doesn't mean accurate. He targeted the Legion's communications officer. The tungsten needle punched through the alien's heavy backpack, detonating the fusion battery. The resulting explosion took out 3 more soldiers. Now the Legion was blind and deaf. "Spread out," Overlord Valkru commanded, his voice cracking with a fear he had never felt before. "Use the smoke generators. Hide our heat." The Calyx deployed thick, black chemical smoke, covering the pass in a dense fog. They thought they were safe. They thought the human couldn't see through the soot. But Kale wasn't using thermal. He was using gravimetric mapping. His scope detected the minute fluctuations in the planet's gravity caused by the mass of the Calyx soldiers. To him the smoke was transparent. The giant aliens stood out like glowing beacons against the cold mountain floor. Crack, crack, crack. 3 shots. 3 more Calyx nobles fell. The Devil's Throat pass became a literal graveyard. The snow was stained blue. The Calyx were now firing at each other, their nerves shattered by the silence. Every time a gust of wind whistled through the rocks, they screamed and fired into the void. Valkru looked at his remaining men. Out of a legion of 5,000, they hadn't even reached the center of the pass, and they had already lost every officer and specialist. They hadn't seen a single human soldier. They hadn't heard a single command. "Withdraw!" Valkru shrieked. "This mountain is haunted. The air itself is killing us. As the survivors turned to flee, Kale stood up from his ledge. His suit shimmered as he deactivated the cloak. He looked down at the retreating aliens, the invincible conquerors who were now running like terrified children. He didn't fire at the retreating backs. He had a different message to send. He picked up a small laser designator and painted the lead Calyx transport ship sitting on the plateau below. "Navy, this is 0, Kale said, his voice flat. "The prey is flushed. Close the door." From the edge of the atmosphere, a human Thunderbolt jet dropped a single high-yield kinetic penetrator. It followed Kale's laser with surgical precision, slamming into the alien ship and turning it into a pillar of fire. The Calyx Legion was trapped. Valkyrie was found 3 days later, wandering the snowdrifts alone, his armor discarded, his mind broken. When the human MDF soldiers found him, he didn't fight. He just stared at the mountain peaks, shivering. "The silence," he whispered in his native tongue. "The silence has eyes." The Galactic Council's military analysts were baffled by the battle of the throat. How could one man stop a legion? They studied Kale's gear, but they knew it wasn't just the railgun. "It is a psychological Tier 1 anomaly," the lead analyst reported. "The humans didn't just fight the Calyx, they exploited the Calyx's own biology. The aliens rely on sensory dominance. The humans took that away and replaced it with an invisible, rhythmic death. They turned a mountain into a psychological torture chamber." Elias Kale was awarded the Medal of Terra, but he didn't show up to the ceremony. He was already back in the field, somewhere in the Andes, sitting perfectly still in the snow. Humanity had proven a terrifying sniper HFY truth. You can have the biggest hammer in the universe, but it doesn't matter if you can't find the nail. We are the species that spent 10,000 years learning how to hide in the tall grass. We are the ones who know that sometimes, the loudest message you can send, is the one that makes no sound at all. This has been Apex Sci-Fi. A bullet you never hear is a message you can't ignore. If you enjoyed this psychological defense of the Himalayas, hit that like button. Comment below, what is scarier, 1,000 tanks or one invisible sniper? Subscribe for the final retribution, the fall of the Emperor. The wind is blowing. The scope is clear.